Oh, wow. We're live. Welcome to our podcast, folks, here in the lounge. We are streamed in several social media channels, and the channels are the Block YouTube channel of iCore BP and Trademore YouTube channel, on our LinkedIn account, and in Twitter. So, this is Doc Vince, your host today. We're diving deep into a topic that has a potential to revolutionize the way we conduct elections, the role of blockchain technology. Now, imagine a world where elections are not only secure and tamper proof, but also accessible to every eligible voter, regardless of their location, be it here or outside, wherever they may be. Blockchain is supposed to make this vision a reality. And in this video, in this podcast, we'll uncover the incredible potential of blockchain in transforming the way we exercise our demographic rights. So, whether you're in tech or you're a tech enthusiast, a political junkie, or just curious about the future of elections, you won't want to miss this. So stay tuned. Now, let me do this first. What are the common problems in elections? It can vary depending on the region and specific circumstances, but some challenges that frequently arise in the election process worldwide includes the following: voter suppression, voter registration issues, election fraud, cybersecurity threats, long lines and wait times. Oh my goodness. Disenfranchisement of vulnerable groups, lack of transparency, election administration issues. I remembered in Maricopa, wherein during the day of election, Maricopa County, in Arizona, during the day of elections, suddenly their voting machines didn't work. So what's happening? What's going on there? Inaccurate exit polls and political polarization. Now, these are the problems, and let's see how blockchain address this. And without further ado, please help me welcome our subject matter expert for today, Professor Johannes Dowe. Professor, good morning to you.
Thank you for inviting me. Welcome, everybody. It's a hi from basically Germany here. So, thank you, Dr. Vince, for inviting me for this very interesting and very wide topic.
It is. And election is like a couple of months. It's already in the corner. And for here in the States. Anyway, for our people, viewers, listeners in this podcast, maybe you could give a short background of yourself and what you do.
Oh, yes. Basically, the most I think important here in this space is I was working for a really long time as a IT and AU consultant. Um, in the blockchain space since like 2016, 17, and went into the Altesh ecosystem, then became the CTO of Altesh Blockchain and a professor at the Altesh University and basically the chair of basic blockchain studies.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Maybe we could go on right away. Okay, let's do this. Blockchain security. To set the stage, maybe you could explain how the blockchain technology can address security concerns given that there's a lot of fraud going on or claims about fraud. Security concerns often associated with the traditional election system.
Yeah, let's divide this topic into two things. Like, whenever things went soundly into the blockchain or onto the blockchain, um, the security measures and the distribution of the system, and let's say the harder to tamper, the older blocks gets. is a new measure in means of documentation and certification out of whatever is placed there. To get to the second part, I think or I assume a huge issue and wider elections is the certification that things went right. So a blockchain itself cannot assure that everything went right in the real life until the data got into the blockchain space. But it can at least assure for everybody curious um, to recheck things and measures which best case got into a standard before um, can be retrieved again and give security on the real life space. Like, am I not sure if from a specific place the number of votes were okay or something like that? Blockchain makes it possible to really make it visible and untamperable later on. Blockchain probably won't help with the, let's say, people getting uh, to place their votes in physical means, but it can help in technical means, like, again, certifying peoples, like with wallets or with transactions or with certifications or proofs of messages.
Hmm.
There it's a bit belonging how big the space or huge the space of voters is. If you go for a countrywide election, it's probably not really effective to figure this out at each single person will place a token somewhere, like a good approach of DAO usually is for voting. But it can be of massive and scalable help in means of proving statements, like proving that things went right.
Okay. It maybe the other question for me would be something like hacking. How secure is having this in a blockchain compared to the traditional election system, wherein there's a lot of, should they say, hacking or tampering?
Oh, okay, so let's divide this again, like the front end. The front end, if you consider, for example, a complete online voting system where people sit at home, best case. Um, there still is the technical realm of those people sitting at home, um, still like an online realm. So there the hacking can take place. And it's to figure out how proofs, for example, handing a chain of signed messages out and retrieve them later to detect tamperings. Um, the online space itself still isn't tightly connected to blocks on chain. So there are still some aspects open to find a standard, like how proving that the person using the specific hashes there or proof there is really the person. So the blockchain space or the blockchain technology itself can really help in figuring things like that out, but it cannot avoid on that end anything at all. So it needs further, let's say, measures to tighten these environments. On the other hand, when things went into the blockchain space, it's at least, let's say, mostly easy to detect if the blockchain just got overtook by hackers, which is not likely if it's a specific one. in means of it's hard for them to do so. This really scales with the size of the blockchain, the number of nodes, the number of blocks in between in which time frame, or call it block times, and the people of participating. It's in most cases at least visual if they're a hacking trial or let's say um, people try to tamper with that because you can see it again visualized in the production of the blocks and by the operating of the nodes, which is in most cases at least very hard, much harder than just breaking into each voter's PC with a kind of worm or whatever else backdoor. Um, the blockchain itself provides a bit more proofs and means of it's distributed worldwide and not in a single place. Usually it has a huge number of nodes and consensus algorithms, which makes it really hard to attack. It belongs a bit if it's a proof of work or any other where you probably have heard of a 51%
Hmm.
attack on the simple proof
Right.
of work. But this basically doesn't mean 51% as as you consider most of the nodes running soundly and reliable, then you need to
Mm.
bring up at least the same number of more nodes doing the tampering. So even
Mhm.
this relatively low number of 51% is basically practically a pretty big number. So then it
Mm.
belongs a bit of if there are different consensus mechanisms or even a number of consensus mechanisms, vice versa, where the number of percentages to tamper with has to be higher. And if they go for interchange, like our chain does, like proof of work and um, the POS, we switch each block. It's even harder to tamper with both at the same time in the correct manner. So there are other chains which use other consensus mechanisms which can be more vulnerable or even less vulnerable.
Mhm.
This really belongs a bit to the setup and to the point of implementation in means of the voting system itself, where it takes place and how the people will be online or in means of offline, still in their bureaus and
Right.
so on. So it's, let's say, a very interesting topic because for a real life, worldwide or a countrywide voting approach, we have many real life problems to face, which starts is not everybody got a device.
Mm.
People still have to be somehow proof they are those who voting. Um, and in means of blockchain technology, it can be of big help in means of a great tool. But just by using blockchain, it won't fix everything just automatically.
Mm. Yeah, I think you partly mentioned about the challenge and scalability, and it's the massive volume of transactions if it's a countrywide elections. Um, how can blockchain systems be designed for scalability without compromising not just security, but those things that you did mention?
Maybe in means of transactions,
Hmm.
it does not need to have each single voter to have a single transaction. It would not be really smart in means of gas consuming. It's a pretty simple and let's say one level approach. But that alone won't fix most of the other problems mentioned in the other realms.
Mm.
So you still can't tell if the guy just transacting a voting token is the real guy eligible to really transact that voting token. Blockchain technology offers a huge and really way more effective in the scaling means possibilities like signing messages, like having chains of signs and certifications,
Mm.
which doesn't need, let's say, initial transactions or active write operations on chain. In means of if you want to later prove things that those went right,
Mm.
it even doesn't need to have each single transaction as a vote. It would be sufficient if you tailor a framework around which still proves that things went right. And most of the things turned out to have a proper hash value, for example.
Right.
Um, this maybe doesn't denote precisely who tried to tamper it, and that means of from the voter's perspective, but it's pretty easy to tell if things went right or not.
Mm.
And I think that would be mostly sufficient in many means, as you don't, let's say, a random people outside won't blame a single other person, anyways, because it's the realm then and the police and the state probably really wanting to know who it is, and that possibility still is open, leading to the issue of just wallets transacting a voting token in a real life countrywide voting is it's not too easy to make it really private then,
Mm.
because each single vote proposal or provision would be backtraceable. And with one reveal of more information, even over time, can then lead to ways to reveal which person it was and what he voted for. Just by everything and every little detail of each single person is documented on chain.
Mm. Mm. And wow, because we are looking at it on uh, a decentralized, wherein there's this privacy thing. However, in a centralized manner, especially with the governments themselves, they would, especially if there's investigations, they would rather know the voter themselves. So if it's in the blockchain, they would be able to trace which person voted who. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's perfectly correct because they at least would know, for example, the wallet address because they provided the voting token,
Mm.
and even had the full information who it was, like social security number and so on, to be just to assure in the positive means that all people of their country got their voting tokens.
Is it
So
possible to have it like a hybrid between a public-private blockchain?
this won't fix in any means that the government still would know and would be able to read back who voted for what in
Mm.
the one or other context and with the one or other, let's say, correct denoting. Maybe if you provide, like, for a family of 10 people, 10 voting tokens, and they have to figure out themselves
Mm.
to provide these or just give the father the tokens. If you go for such a system, which is not really fair and not a means of a correct voting, procedure. But just let's assume that as an example, the government would still know who voted for what then, because they know this went to that family. And so in these means, the signing process gives much more chances to not reveal uh, the single vote to be retrievable precisely to a person, because it's not every detail which is recorded on chain. If you have a certified and well standardized process, you can make use again of the one-way functions there to be still sure that so many voted for that one, but not having every single piece and bit of information to really easily backtrace that.
Hmm. Another thing that you did mention, which strike me most as well, is you did mention about the gas fees for voters token. When you talk about gas fees, um, this won't be economical in a larger scale. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, basically not. But you heard it right. Let's say we have a country with 200 million voters,
Mm,
or at least possible voters. Um, and you need to provide mint and transfer the voting tokens around in many means, maybe from this to there. That would be at least, at very least, two transactions each.
mm,
And you can consider if, even if it's microcents, like if you go for 1 billion or something transaction, this is still a considerable amount of investment there.
mm. But wouldn't that be cheaper compared to what the traditional election system is doing?
Okay, in general, this really belongs again to the blockchain in use. This really would belong a bit to how the system then really will be implemented, like how many frictions will be in means of how many transactions you really need per vote to make a sense.
Mm,
Um, so what I was talking about before, if you can make it partly, not fully, but partly reducing the number of active
right,
rights needed,
right.
that can massively reduce by tenfold factors the need for gas. This was my intention to
Mm,
mention this, because if you just go plainly for, okay, we transmit voting tokens, you will have scaling issues, like possibly everybody wants to vote in the last possible half hour then.
mm,
Um, this really doesn't scale very well, no matter which blockchain we may use. As well, if you go for each one, having a voting token ready, that token needed to get there somehow. And this probably not in a single step, and it has to go from there, which is one step.
mm,
And can be a burning address per candidate or something like that. So this is simply just one, but I'm having more in mind the provision how you distribute it. And this is usually not a single layer,
mm,
because
mm,
it just would be way too much
mm,
for a single entity. And the provision of the voting token in a single layer without any further proofs would again leave open some doubts and means how went the distribution really? Because someone who wants to verify it from the outside, best case, a normal uh, citizen of that country, can't tell of if a specific wallet is of different persons or if it's just from one of the government.
Mm,
So in these means, it needs a bit more, let's say, elaborated thinking about and let's say making better use of the blockchain technology
mm,
as just by this simple approach. It means reflecting back to to a DAO. Uh, People of a DAO know each other. They have to decide over their pools of money to provide or whatever. They know
mm.
each other, and it's not a problem if their voting process is not private, because they more or less will state, I would like this go there because of whatever else, and they usually discuss this uh, before they vote. So it's no or low problem
Mm.
if it is retrievable who is which meaning what to do with the assets of a DAO or the decisions of a DAO. This is completely different with public voting because we massively want to avoid that it's retrievable that what a single person voted for, because this will just lead to big issues.
Maybe for the sake of our listeners, maybe okay, can you explain more about DAO and yeah, about the DAO and how this applies to what we're talking?
Basically, DAO is just an example for a distributed, let's say, company or something like that, or a club. Um, it's a kind of company or installation which can live worldwide, which is distributed,
Mm,
and where people come in, build a pool of funds, for example, and later on decide where the funds can go. This is itself not, let's say, without issues, as we had DAOs already being tampered with, but let's say there are enough well working DAOs nowadays on the planet. So, what I would like to refer more is this is well known and more or less small environment
mm,
with different constraints. And there, some of these constraints are less private and have to be less private as a public voting procedure or countrywide.
mm,
As well, if you look again to the other hand of like how people can vote, not everybody has a computer at home. Not everybody has a smartphone in a normal country. And there are even a good number of those who can't even see what's on a device or on a computer screen. They are disabled. There are those who cannot, for example, type something. So in these means, this is pretty much different from the normal approach in an office thing,
mm.
like a company which is distributed or something like that. We have to consider more constraints and more details to make it really sound, to make it barrier free, which I think is one of the most important aspects there. That especially with having science and making use of blockchain technology and not just transactions,
Mhm.
is a big chance to make it easier for, let's say, all people to take part in voting in a sound process.
Hmm. Going back to blockchain, and you did mention that uh, if it's full blockchain technology used in voting, that would, I guess, that would re- be really difficult in having that one. But instead, having it on kind of a second layer to the traditional system. I don't know if I understood it, got it right. But if it will be another layer for a traditional election system, could it improve the trustworthiness of the results? And if it does, um, limitations that we should be aware of.
Absolutely, it does, and this is why I mention it. Like, for example, if you go for a constitutionary, I hope I got that word right. I'm not a native speaker. Like a circle of people going to vote. If you certify the number of votes which come there, and you usually have those offices there
Mm,
taking care who went to these offices and went voting, um, it's mostly about plausibility checks, which is the easiest one
mm,
because you can't exceed then the maximum number of voters there. And this is very obvious and very
mhm,
easy to state, even on a second layer. And you can
mm,
put in these proofs again on chain, maybe even lists of hash values into the IPFS and just store the IPFS thing on chain. So everybody then can have a neat graphic even with all numbers and a huge binary large object there,
mm,
where you even can have nice software making this more visible and so on, and statistics and so on. Um, then a single voting token would be backtraceable, not mentioning the backtracing issues there.
mm,
So it's for, I think at least, for the person in an election system, it's more of importance to know things went right.
mm,
So he needs proofs of plausibility. Nobody can really check each single vote and make sense of it. It starts with the wallets. They have to be revealed in a way for that third party check-in, not the government, because the government knows where they put their voting tokens. So it's even of no use for a normal guy
mm,
in that realm trying to be sure things went right. It's more of importance that, okay, this area had so many votes at all, and it's plausible in these means. Maybe some more checks. It means how
mm.
many wives or how many female it's or his or something like that.
Right.
Like you go for more easy retrievable and recognizable measures that things went right.
Mm,
For
mm,
example, if you can even place something like, okay, that family went roughly at that time frame there. And when many people and many families went there, like in a small village, they will know, okay, I came after that one, and came after me. Like if you place just proofs somewhere else and make these proofs visible, it's of much more important and much easier to check of plausibility for um, the normal people because they know, okay, that timestamp from those because
mm,
they told me their whatever a vector that they can see, okay, this was my vote, but not what I voted in means of proofs of messages. Um, then it's much more of use for a normal guy to
Mm,
recheck if things went right.
mm,
It's not plausible that whoever really will track each voting token. So there can be much smarter procedures, standards rolled out, making it even easier for those in doubt, maybe, and rise the trust in the voting system itself, just by making use of the more elaborated possibilities of blockchain technologies.
hmm. Can I put it this way, making it more simple for me to understand? It's like in a county wherein you had 10,000 population and you had it registered in a blockchain. Once election comes, suddenly the results came out and it came out 15,000. So that itself, it would determine that there's a big difference. It's wrong, and blockchain would be able
Yep.
to authenticate and determine that what the results are are not correct.
Yes, and in means of having a sound election, that, even though it's a very simple example in these means, would be enough to tell everybody, okay, this didn't went right. I have to doubt it.
Mm,
And this is what in political means probably be of most use, because we have to restart this election because it's not plausible. And this is an easy measure,
mm,
an easy measure which everybody can understand. Each single voter can understand, okay, the number of votes were too many.
mm,
Maybe
mm,
too many from a circle of where they vote, because these constituencies usually are encircled, and that many votes are plausible coming from there, and you have more of these. And if a number, which in ballots usually happens, that nowadays with paper votes, that there are more of these papers in one of these constituencies, but you can't really check in means of if this went right or not. But
mm,
making use of blockchain technologies and these means of a technical system stating things and even better recording things, um, it's enough to state this went correct or this did not went correct out of these or that reasons. Um, Opting out as a side effect, it's not retrievable who uh, which single person voted for what.
mm,
Um, it's just enough if you know you have one of these circles. Um, it's plausible. Not everybody voted just for one, which is unplausible as well. And if it's happening like that, it needs more proofs to be really plausible for normal peoples in these means. If you align the system right, you can even deliver that proof.
mm,
But in general, those simple statistics will be much more acceptable for the normal voters of that or participants of that country, uh, or individuals or members or citizens of that country, um, to find out for themselves, okay, I believe this was sound, or I have strong doubts. And this is basically what should come out. It should be a robust system. As we see, if it's too technical, if we put too much technique and high-end stuff into it, the more complex and more complicated technologies become, um, the more cases of failures we will see, like machines just break and
Mm,
so on. So a blockchain technology in these means with the signing message is a distributed one. It's not a single machine which has to deliver that proof. Each single node of a chain can just prove it.
right.
So it's um, again finding a robust system, which is easy, where blockchain technology is totally easy in these means. The big advances are um, how the math behind, let's say, get into one-way proofs or something like one-way functions and so on.
Mm,
And the second smart thing which goes in how to use it. But the system, how to use this best and efficient way, probably is very simple and easy to understand and is not including further big machinery to work on. It's just a concept. And the concept itself usually is easy to transmit, transfer, and to adopt and to understand. Like we're used to many complex systems, even as a system. Like,
yeah.
your car, this works somehow. You never have built a motor, but okay, you have to put oil in it, eventually water, and regularly fuel. So the system itself can be even more complicated in tinier details, but it is understandable if it's smart laid out to stay with the motor thing that people can understand. Okay, and within this black box, I can see here making noises and like turning around when I put all the right things in it and start it. This is enough for the use case and to understand, okay, this works.
But do we have like really use cases like countries or even cities using blockchain for election that you're
Uh,
aware
Basically, yes, I've seen there a few companies. I checked a few. I think they're the most biggest three of them. They have different approaches. Um, and I would think the concepts they use are not too wrong, but at the moment I think it's missing a bit of what I mentioned,
of? Hmm.
the sound concept and the proposable working and let's say procedures of such and rolling out a certain standard as well. I see a lot of them projecting a lot of this security into just machines, just single machines. And there you will see the issue when this machine breaks. It's
Mm,
not on the same level interchangeable because just when this machine there has a specific whatsoever and the next machine there has a specific whatsoever there, um, where blockchain technology can be used a bit smarter in means of each single node is on the same level, is on the same let's say plausibility. It's doing its part for itself, and the just the number of them doing the most of the security stuff, and so like getting to a consensus again, which is again very simple.
hmm.
It's in these means a technical voting on the same level. So it's, I'm trying as an example, it's no matter which node you initially ask to transfer your token from one wallet or your wallet to a different wallet. Um, it's simply the same which one you ask because everything which comes after that, it's all nodes on the same level are coming to consensus. Okay, this is correct. The balance is okay, we can do that or not. If you go for such a consensus and take it too much apart in like projecting, we have these cool voting machines, which are itself very complicated, and you can't tamper with the machines themselves because they are so sophisticated. You're losing this broad approach where one part can take over the other part, and every little part can prove the other parts in making a sense. Know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You, I think that's one of the centralization risks. And if we go into potential risk associated with having it on a blockchain technology or blockchain based election systems, um, I guess those things needs to be considered. And looking at the future development of, should we say, blockchain in elections, looking ahead, what development in blockchain and cryptography do you foresee that could really revolutionize our elections?
Um, in these means, I don't know what will come, but the current technology we have is by far enough to find a sound system by concept,
Mm,
which is, let's say, if we would had a blockchain which could do like 200 million, 300 million operations or transactions per second, this won't make any difference uh, on the parts mentioned because it's just overtaking it, let's say.
correct.
Um, the blockchain approach, what we actually have, are absolutely enough to cover this because we always need a sound system around, uh, a sound standard for that specific use case, which is distributable, communicatable, and everybody can understand. And this means blockchain as is and its technologies of signing messages, crypting messages, and so on is by far enough to cover this topic. Um, it's just the question how to align it best case, and in these means the easiest way each member in doubt can check plausibilities. So we don't need this hyper speed or hyper whatever new blockchain technology to wait for doing this. We already have this technology at hand. It's just to use it effectively and avoid the obstacles, which usually just are from a too, let's say, naive approach, rolling things out like that. It's most things we have are easy, and I really like to get
Hmm.
to this KISS principle, keep it simple and stupid,
Mhm.
which is military concept. And I am absolutely sure that we can find with the existing tools uh, such systems and roll out such systems um, when we just step a bit apart and use the creativity of mind to really make the things count which are suitable for a specific context. Like it's as mentioned before, it's not really a smart approach to have a single voting token, providing it everywhere and
Mhm.
let everybody transmit it later on because it just um, yeah, it's the simplest approach, but rises under the line more issues than it's worth.
Right.
Um, a, a better alignment of, let's say, proofs, a better alignment of trust at specific positions, at specific environments, or plausibilities uh, of a circle or an environment or a election, whatever part would do much more in positive ways, and for example, mostly won't need to use extra gas to reflect that bad because proofs and so on are gasless.
Mm.
They scale massively. They are just limited by, for example, the node you ask, the speed of that node. But if you ask more nodes, they can give all, or they will give all the same answers. So it massively scales, and these means just by the maximum computational speed of the machine you ask. And if this is not enough, you just ask the next one. This has nothing to do with a transaction per second or something like that.
Mm.
Just the speed of computation there. And as we know, we have specific hardware already for figuring out hashes or so, or SHA-3. Um, this is really fast. This is much faster than you probably will need. It's just, for example, if you go for a real life process, you will end up with many, let's say, nodes to be asked just because the lines to the nodes are limited. Like if you have 200 million people asking the same website, which is on one computer,
Mm-hmm.
this will cause issues.
No.
As
Yes.
we know from the clouds,
Mm-hmm.
if you have many computers sharing their knowledge and all coming to the same conclusion, this is no problem anymore because there is no single load issue. This scales much better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked a lot. This is a lot for people to digest. And I'm gonna go backtrack, listen to our podcast again to really digest things. And I'm so thankful that you're here, Professor Johannes. There's the one thing that I think I learned is that, or maybe you can add more, uh, is it's not right, or it's not possible just to put everything into blockchain, but rather we can use the existing election systems and have a second layer of blockchain technology that would help in checking the plausibility of the election results. Um, and with that, maybe you could give us your final thoughts on our topic before we close down.
Yeah, first, sorry as being a techie in these means and pretty close to the topic, and I know this causes issues in understandability. I really tried my best, let's say. But what I wanted to say, it's the space is completely open to reuse existing systems, and it's really cool to reuse existing systems. It starts where you have these offices to vote, where officials sit and check the people who come in, because it's probably practically not feasible to have everything in electronic form and still knowing this went right. It starts with the provisioning of the vote possibilities, and the analog processes of those showing up in these offices are
Mm,
mm, a huge proof you would lose otherwise if you go for everything fully electronic, even if you go for social security numbers and so on and so on. That because you lose the analog process of people really voting. So for the voting machines or the voting machineries nowadays in use, this wouldn't mean they would get completely useless. It's more or less a thing how to add them or improve them with some skills.
Mm,
Mm, Best case in a broad way, where it is, yeah, it's possible that just machines fail and you just use the different one and come to the same result. And just making a chain of trust more visible and more sound and more verifiable in these means, as well as improving the processes at all in means of effectivity, in means of maybe you don't need to print that many papers anymore, which is, let's say, an effort itself,
mm,
and provide those. It can help massively from even something like token sending stuff. And on the other hand, it improves it in the stability of access later on. Like, for example, placing things on IPFS, the cloud system, which is not really temporal in these means because a file name of a binary large object is the hash. And to have a hash collision there and still having a sound context there, it would even with quantum computers a big issue. It's probably not possible. But you can add a huge number of proofs, including current systems and improving current systems by placing the right information and the right proofs on chain. So
mm,
not everything needs to go on a chain. Like for example, if I get all the hashes in however I lay out the system for a special voting environment, um, or subset there, like a village or something like that. I can place much more information, even depersonalized, in a good digital file somewhere, which I can prove again that this is not tampered with because I produce these hashes of it, which is basically the file name, so everybody can retrieve it again and look into the data, maybe even with a piece of software, making this more visible. And it's absolutely sufficient to place the proofs on chain. And this is no load issue then anymore in any
mm.
means. And even very effective because it just costs a fraction of the gas a simple voting token approach would need.
Right, right, right. Wow. This is a lot, Professor Johannes. By the way, Professor Dow is the course director of Altash Blockchain. Did we already start in Altash, Prof?
We're actually, let's say, we have regular students' projects caring
Mm,
about things like supply chain, things like how to help with resources, provisions, people helping peoples or building DAOs or even having voting implementations with
mm,
the help of blockchain technologies. So these questions of scalability um, and let's say smart aligned proofs of messages more or less show up regularly.
mm,
um, I'm really curious what at the current batch, I think they have to present in a bit more than 2 weeks their capstones. Um, and I saw at least three of the students' project having something like voting in mind. So this will be nice discussions again.
mm.
it's a good learning process, as usually students on, let's say, the basic studies don't have in mind that with a real life countrywide voting, there are, let's say, less able peoples around, not everybody having a smartphone nor having a computer,
Mm.
how to really prove in detail that that person, its vote is getting is submitted, really is that person, because this is in many means very complex. And to head back again, the current existing systems of having at least a good number of analog parts, like in a small village, those are caring about the ballot boxes, usually know if those people coming there are from their village or not. This is a very good, let's say, analog proof. And
Right.
we shouldn't get rid of that just because we see a new and hyper technology throwing everything away we have. This is usually not a good idea because analog, let's say, analog alignments holding themselves proofs which are not temperable. Um, they are tempered in many aspects, yes. But like for example, if you go to your favorite bank, um, the guy there knows your face and knows how you talk. And no matter how good deep fake computer software um, you bring with, like on a monitor, he will instantly know, okay, this is a monitor I'm talking to and not the right person. Having this as an example.
Mm,
So
mhm.
many
But
of these analog aspects
mm,
in real life processes um, should stay. They can be improved, yes, but they shouldn't thrown overboard because they really have their advances. They really have their effectivity in many means, and it wouldn't just be smart and just very costly um, to get rid of them.
you'll be surprised in the Philippines that most people already have their analog phones, and it has been kind of put into not law but rather a requirement that they would register their SIM cards and they cannot just buy any SIM card and have their own phones. Anyway, I think that itself would be one step that could also help in the registration of the possible voters. And I guess we consumed already a good amount of time. And I thank you, Professor, for being here. Thank you so much. In conclusion, the fusion of blockchain tech and election really presents, for me, an exciting frontier in the realm of democracy. The potential of increased transparency, security, and accessibility is really undeniable. But it's crucial, from what we heard from our subject matter experts, to remember that while blockchain offers innovative solutions, it's not the silver bullet. It requires careful study, research, implementation, collaboration, and continuous improvement. So, as we wrap up today's discussion, we want to extend again our heartfelt thanks to our subject matter expert, Professor Johannes Dowe. Your insights, invaluable insights, and expertise have really shed a light on this very complex topic and enriched our understanding. And we encourage each and every one to our viewers. We hope you have gained valuable insights into the possibilities and challenges of blockchain and elections. This topic is very ever evolving, and your engagement and awareness are essential to shaping its future. So we encourage you to keep exploring, asking questions, and participating in the in the ongoing dialogue about the intersection of technology and democracy. Together, we can work towards more robust, inclusive, and trustworthy electoral systems for all. And thank you for joining us on this journey. And as always, stay curious, stay informed. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought provoking discussions. See you on the next episode. Thank you, Professor Johannes Dowe. Talk to you soon. And don't go yet. I'm going to ask some more questions. So, again, to our viewers, thank you and goodbye.
Yes.